Welcome back to Liberty Unabashed. I'm your host, Matt. This is KLNR, AM 1460, 96.5 FM. That was Lorenzo Alexander. And I tell you what, man, if you hear this, sir, I like your music, but some of your stuff is a little too aggressive for me to play this morning. And if you go look at his music, you'll find that out. All right, so we have a caller. This is the Common Sense Conservative, Robert. Can you hear me, Robert?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for calling in. I've been following you for about 2.5 years, maybe a little longer. A lot of my audience isn't internet savvy, folks, and that's not putting anybody down, just the realization of technology. So why don't you give these folks a brief rundown of who you are, and then we'll just go from there, because I know you were at the event where Antifa was attacking anti-mask protesters and the church event up there. So let's roll with that.
My name's Robert Zerfing. I'm not too worried about telling people my full name because there is a large group of people who have made my name very, very public in attempts to hurt me. Pretty much my story is that I started going out and filming these protests and riots and rallies and so on I started back in 2015 when the Black Lives Matter movement first started. And it has kind of progressed into the Patriot movement that we're seeing today, people standing up for their freedoms and their First Amendment rights and their ability to go out and protest without fear of being assaulted and attacked. And the reason that people are doing that is because there's an entire group of people going out there, literally just assaulting people for waving the American flag and for just going out and just trying to have a rally talking about freedom or an unjust law or an unconstitutional law, and they're getting attacked. You can't even have a church service on the Portland waterfront right now without it being attacked by these violent, militant leftists that are just going out because they don't agree with you. They're just going to attack you. And and because I go out and I have for about 5-6 years now, going out and exposing them, showing them what the media refuses to show, what the media excuses, or they even call them freedom fighters at times, and we've had politicians going out and calling them freedom fighters and good people who are literally domestic terrorists going around and assaulting kids and women and like I said, church services. And so they don't like me very much because I'm good at what I do, and I go out and expose them. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it. There's a lot of people in this country right now who are just unaware. They don't know what's happening. They don't know that women and kids have been sent to the hospital from these people, and the media is just silent. They refuse to give the whole story if they give the story at all. For instance, you brought up Olympia, and event that happened up north. There was 2 events that were going on. One was anti-mandate event in Olympia, Washington, up at the Capitol. And then there was a second event that was going on that was a liberal woman, older, disabled. She was going to give a speech. She's running for city council up there. And because she said mean things, quote unquote, about Antifa, Antifa planned on going and either assaulting the anti-mandate rally or her. And there was a group of people that showed up to do security for both events, depending on which way they went. And they decided to go, because there was a lot of more people up at the Capitol building, they decided to go assault the little old lady down at the City Hall. So this group who decided to come up and do security marched down there to provide security for her, and they essentially chased Antifa off. Well, one of the security members got shot by Antifa. He got shot in the ankle, and Antifa member shot 5 times. And fortunately, due to some new information that came out, fortunately, two rounds hit a steel post, which probably ended up saving lives. I mean, to be honest. And and then one round, of course, hit Tiny, who was the name of the guy who got shot. And the media only said that an anti-vaxxer was shot by a counter-protester. That's what the media said. They didn't say that, first of all, who the guy was. They called him a Proud Boy in most of the articles. They did not give any context whatsoever as to why those people were down there in the first place. They didn't even mention the lady who was going to give a speech. They did not mention how the group of AntiFa was coming down to assault a little old lady, and that is why. That's why I do what I do.
Let me jump in here. So you're telling us down here in a very patriotic community that the media is covering for people who are committing acts of violence simply because you disagree with them. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. Now, do you guys think you patriots up there, do you think the government up there is protecting the domestic terrorism coming from Antifa?
100%.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and if I find it hard for these, excuse me, I'm tongue-tied this morning. I find it hard to believe that these people are so brainwashed. Would you consider them zombies, or are you able to engage them in any kind of discussion to try to convince them otherwise, or are they just zombified and whatnot?
They don't live in the real world. I mean, I can honestly say that 100%. Like, you might, in a group of about 20, you might be able to reach one. But, for instance, they call everybody who waves an American flag a white supremacist or a Nazi. Because if you believe in American exceptionalism, that makes you a nationalist, and that makes you a Nazi. And you can sit there and you can have, on the Patriot side, waving American flags, you could actually have a minority white group of people there. You could have, for instance, we have Samoans, we have African Americans, we have Latinos, and on the Antifa side, they're all white. You might maybe find one person who might not be white on the Antifa side, and yet Antifa will continuously call the group of patriots, again, all ethnicities, they'll call them white supremacists. And that's what I mean by they don't live in the real world, because they're looking at them. They can see them with their own eyes. And yet, if you are a person of color, you're still a white supremacist or a Nazi, even though obviously you're not.
Right, and that's unfortunate. I've often described what I see happening as the same thing as the demonization of the Jews by the National Socialist Workers' Party. These people, yep. A lot are collectivists, and it's the same ideology. Would you say that people are good people up in your community are waking up, or are they all moving towards one side or another, or what's happening in that front there?
I think very, very slowly some people are starting to wake up. Unfortunately, not enough. And mainly because, we call people who aren't involved, we call them normies. Because they're just normal, everyday people who just go about their lives. They do their thing. And most of the people don't watch the news. They don't listen to the radio and listen to, shows like this, for instance. They just live their life. They wake up, they go to work, they go home, they, go to bed. And until it's actually on their doorstep, they don't know and they don't really care. Because it doesn't affect them personally, right? Like, I would go down and cover the riots in Portland, and there would be fires, there would be gunfire, there would be, flashbangs and tear gas going on, and if you walked up 3 blocks, people are just going about their business, going to dinner, doing their stuff, and they had no idea what's going on a couple blocks down the road. Or they just didn't care. But people, as more people get exposed to the reality and not what the media is feeding them, they are starting to wake up. I would go down and cover another riot in Portland, and people would be, on my channel, on my live stream, and they would say like, "Oh wow, I thought the riots ended 100 days ago." And I'm like, "No, this has been going on consistently. Now they've slowed down and died off, but for a long time, the media, the politicians, they just pretend like it's not happening anymore."
So let me ask you a question about what you observed in Portland. Would you consider the fact that they were attacking the courthouse, if they could have stormed and got into the building, would they have?
They did.
They did. Oh, that's right. They did on one occasion. I've watched several different footages, mostly from you, to be honest with you, because you are a great independent journalist, and I'm very thankful for you to be out there because, the truth needs to be exposed. So do you think that this is going to stop anytime soon, or do you think it's escalating, or what's your opinion on that?
It's really a good question because it can go either way. I know that there are select groups that are wanting it to escalate. For instance, on the left side, there are gun clubs that are being formed. There's groups called the Redneck Revolt and John Brown Gun Club, the Puget Sound Socialist Gun Club. These are all militias, essentially. They're Antifa militias. They go out and they train with firearms. They believe that they are truly freedom fighters. They believe that they want to bring in the communist revolution kind of stuff. And as we've seen, shootings have become a little bit more of a common occurrence. And then on the right, you have people who are just tired of it. They're tired of people coming out and assaulting people. They're tired of their friends getting shot. They're tired of the fighting and so on, but they don't want it to escalate. They're just ready for it to escalate. But at the same time, once people start realizing that life isn't a video game, in the past, that has helped it slow down a bit. And then when people stop going out, then their bravery comes back and they're not, so worried about getting hurt anymore. But, honestly, yeah, I don't know. At this point, the gunfire is new, so it's a new element coming into it.
Well, thank you.
And if people aren't getting held accountable for shooting people, because we still don't know who the shooter is, they haven't arrested anybody yet. This was on the 4th that this happened, and we still don't have an arrest. So if people aren't getting held accountable for it, then I guess they're going to feel a little bit more emboldened.
And that's kind of my opinion. And honestly, I hope you are looking for your security, because I view what's happening in many ways as the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in the 1913 era. And I expect it's only going to escalate because the media is selling, that anybody that doesn't want all this government is kind of, a white supremacist and a fascist and whatnot. I'm curious here. Now, is it the majority of the time, is Antifa the aggressors, or is it going back and forth, or is it just people responding to them for the most part?
Antifa, 9 times out of 10. I would almost say 99 times out of 100. Yeah, I'll say 99 times out of 100, Antifa is the aggressor. People defend themselves, and sometimes people defend themselves with prejudice. But on the 4th, up in Olympia, Antifa was the initial aggressor because they publicly, it's all out there on social media, they publicly threatened to assault this old lady. And the security guys, the Patriots that went down there, they chased them off. Like, they walked to Antifa, yes, so that could be, construed as them being the aggressor, quote unquote, but they just followed them through town. They chased them away from City Hall. But the vast majority of the time, it is a Patriot group who is having a rally or an event or a church service, and then Antifa will walk into it. They will march in from whatever park or rally point they had, and they will march in and just start assaulting people.
Well, I appreciate your perspective. I really do. So what do you think is the solution to what's happening in your area? I can tell you where I live, we're south of you. I'm in Redding, California, And I can tell you that Antifa, BLM, they won't do that here because, well, what happened, what you described with the Patriots kind of chasing them out of town, that's kind of happened here every time they've come here. You know, our militias have stood up and kind of just patrolled the area and kept the peace, and they've all left peacefully, and they had their little protest, but it was peaceful. So what do you think the solution is up for where you're at?
Law enforcement needs to start doing their job. We actually, on the 4th, we had a conversation with a couple state troopers, and one of the guys was like, you know what, we would just love it if you guys would just stop coming up here. And as in the Proud Boys and the security teams and stuff like that. And we're like, cool, they'll stop coming up here if you start doing your job. Start ensuring people's ability to have a free speech event or a peaceful rally. Like, if you guys would create a wall or a barrier between the people who want to kill us and and the kids and the moms and the dads that are out here waving a flag or holding a sign, well, then you won't need security here anymore and people aren't going to get hurt. But the fact that law enforcement stands down, and I've literally watched 50 cops watch a guy bleeding out in the street and not even flinch as Antifa pulled him into their crowd and started beating him and wailing on him, and he broke the guy's head. Like, it was horrible to watch, and the cops didn't even flinch, and that is why we have security groups going out. And if they want it to stop, if they want the violence to stop, law enforcement needs to start getting involved again, and prosecutors need to start prosecuting people. If they don't do that, then we're going to be in a perpetual civil war, essentially, on the streets, and it's horrible.
Well, I agree.
It shouldn't be that way in America.
No, you're right. It shouldn't be that way in America. You know, we used to be a society where we didn't have to agree. We just had to agree that we were Americans and that we could have our different perspectives. But now with the rise of the Fourth Reich, which is what I describe as the left these days, it's all about conformity. You have to believe what they want, or they have the right to attack you in their mind. And that's sad. So I hope you pass this out to the people you run into. There are millions of us out here watching what's happening. And, you know, we here in the South will always welcome refugees from your area as long as they don't bring their policies here. Because I can tell you, in my profession, I deal with more people inbound to this area because of what's happening north and south of us than what brings them here is that we're not like that. So if you always need a safe haven, you can come this direction. I hope it doesn't come that way, but I'm running out of time here this morning. So is there anything you want to throw out here to this audience? Because they're not going to see your videos, majority of them, because they're not on the Internet so much. So I'm going to give you the floor and just run with it.
Honestly, people need to just start standing up. Even if you're not watching the videos and doing this stuff, and being a part of it, like, become a part of it. Go out and do a flag wave. Just organize a weekly flag wave so that people who are a part of it actually see that they do have allies out there, people who love their country, who are unapologetically American, because any more up here in the Pacific Northwest or even down in the Bay Area, for instance, anybody going out and trying to stand up for freedom, they are oppressed. They are oppressed. They're oppressed by the government, the media, and the militant arm of the Democrat Party, Antifa, and BAM, and all of these other groups out there, Black Lives Matter, all these groups that just want to silence you and shut you down just for being an American citizen. These people hate our way of life. They hate the idea of freedom and personal responsibility. They will do whatever it takes to shut it down, and it's just, you know, we need more people to start standing up. Like, the United States is in need of a revolution right now, and it's a revolution to get our freedoms back. And if people don't stand up, and if people don't start getting off their couches and actually start getting involved, we are going to lose this country. We are losing it right now. We are not a free society anymore. We have some freedoms, but that's about it. And until good people start doing stuff, evil will take over. And, I mean, it's time. it is time for good people to start standing up.
Well, I thank you, and I tell you the truth there, Robert. Millions of us are. They're just, the voices are being suppressed and hidden with the bombardment of information elsewhere to keep us all feeling like we're individuals instead of a group. Because freedom is on fire across this country, but if you watch the TV, you wouldn't realize that people are rejecting the mandated vaccines and that garbage. You know, I truly thank you for the time, and keep up the good work, because there are people out there watching your videos. I'm one of them. You know, one of the first videos I saw of yours was them trying to lay siege to the federal courthouse in Portland, where they were lobbing, looked like Molotov cocktails into the police structure there. So
yep.
I appreciate you being there. And I'm going to run out of time here this morning. So thank you. And can you give your contact information for people who are interested in following your stuff?
Absolutely. You can find me on YouTube at The Common Sense Conservative. I'm also on Facebook at The Common Sense Conservative. Yeah, I mean, that's really the best way.
Well, I know you were.
You can find me on Twitter, Robert Zerfing.
Okay. And I know you're on other platforms like Rockfin, I believe, and
yep.
a couple others. Well, I thank you for the time, and I'm going to run out of time for my show today. So I'm going to wish you goodbye, and just know that there are millions of us there that stand with you, Robert.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. You have a good Sunday.
You too.
All right. So I'm going to run out of time for today. And, you know, I hope you guys, I see Steve's on the phone. I'm not going to take your call. I'm out of time, Steve. But if you call in on my next show, I'll respond to you there. We're going to go out of today's show with Topher. Olympia Has Fallen. And this